Please welcome Kjeld Jensen.
Hello, good morning, good afternoon, everybody, wherever you might be in the world. And you are truly everywhere in the world, I can see from the incredible sign up we have for this session. Thank you so much for taking a little bit of time to spend with me and talking about the importance of negotiation. Even more importantly, the choice between positional negotiation or collaboration. Now, what is the reason that I feel it's important to do this session? Well, one of them is obviously that we are right now in a very important moment where there seems to be a movement towards changing the way we perceive negotiation and how we want to negotiate. So my key points today are really the one, as you can see on the slide right now. One of them is obviously that we are in the middle of a pandemic. Hopefully one day we'll be out of it. But what we are seeing right now is that whether it's because of the pandemic or just a general change in the mindset of people, more people seem to be focused and wanting collaboration in their negotiation than ever before. What we also see right now is obviously that the pandemic requires and demands a lot more of negotiation, renegotiation, and a lot of these negotiations are actually happening online, which is a very different environment than handling your negotiation face-to-face. Now, for centuries, there has been this myth about negotiation that it has to be a win-lose game, just like a football game, that one team have to win and the counterpart have to lose. That is a myth, because we know, and by we I mean so many scholars and experts in the field, knows that we can do so much better by changing that mindset, by leaving the positional negotiation focus that I call a zero-sum and move into collaboration. Not because it sounds nice, but because you can actually make more profit out of that, and I can make more profit out of that. So everybody can truly win. So I'm going to talk about that in today's session as well. Our research through more than 35 years have shown as well that so many organizations and negotiators actually don't have a strategy. That means they don't have a plan on how they want to negotiate. And obviously, they don't get the best possible outcome by not utilizing any plan or not having any plan whatsoever. So one of the things we're going to talk about in the next 45 minutes as well is what is the strategy, how do we implement the strategy, and why is it even important that we involve the counterpart in the strategy and agree on rules of the game. So the big question is obviously, how can we all do so much better in negotiation? That's really the key point of our session today. Now, once again, thank you for all of you signing up. I know that some of you are going to watch the recorded version and some of you are going to attend live. And please do use the option of asking questions. I hope we will have time during this session to answer any questions, whatever. If any of you have questions afterwards, send me an email, send me a text on LinkedIn, whatever you feel like. I was actually just looking through the list of people that signed up, and it's truly amazing. We have people from everywhere in the world, and I feel so sorry for people in the Asia Pacific, because this is in the middle of the night for you guys. So you are in 11 o'clock in the evening or 1 o'clock in the morning in Sydney. So thank you and welcome all of you. So as you can see, this is a really truly global audience that we have. Now, I won't waste time really introducing myself. The video did it. I've been working on negotiation for many, many years. I live and breathe the concept of negotiation, collaboration, related communication, and especially trust. I'm a dad, and that explains everything, because when you have kids, you negotiate constantly and all the time. So if you start watching your relationship with your kids, you basically get all the training that you need in negotiation. So I will basically leave it at that. Besides that, I have published a number of books. If anyone should have an interest in any of those books, you can visit Amazon or any bookstore whatsoever, and you'll see the latest release out there. And if you hang on to the end, I will actually share one of my books with you absolutely free. It's an ebook, obviously, because you can download it immediately. And it is the book, How to Negotiate Your Way Through the COVID-19 Crisis. Might be relevant in the situation that we are in right now. Now, one of the many, many reasons that I felt it was important to do this talk here today is that so many negotiations today are happening basically like what you can see on the slide right now. You have the soldiers in the trenches pointing the rifle towards each other. So that is what I call a positional negotiation, a zero-sum game. I'm sure most of you have heard that phrase before, which basically means I win at your expense or you win at my expense. I've seen a lot of clients and organizations heading towards the end of the year right now, especially in retail, saying, well, here we go. We are close to starting the fight again. We're ready to war because we're going to renegotiate our annual contracts with our suppliers. And when I hear a statement like that, I really shake my head, because that is the typical old school approach into a negotiation. Look at the screen, look at the slide. It explains to you how a lot of negotiators, and sometimes a little bit more in procurement than others, are viewing negotiation. And this is all wrong. This is not the way we should treat long-term negotiation. Back to what I said earlier, not because it sounds nice to move into collaboration, but because you can actually make more money, and at the same time help your counterpart be more successful. A very interesting study we have done shows us clearly that a lot of negotiators lose the potential in a actual negotiation. That means that the buyer and the seller, I keep it very simple and just call it buyer and a seller, actually negotiate whatever they're negotiating, agreeing on that deal, signing the contract, and leaving the conference room. And they might, each of them, be very happy. But what we have learned is that the buying side typically only receive 19% of all the values. So we are talking about a negotiation that has a value of, let's say, $1 million. The buying side would obviously only leave with a total amount of value of 190,000. We'll have a selling side that will be leaving this negotiation with an average value of 39%. So in this case, that would be 39%. And last but not least, and this is really the important part, we know that up to 42% of all the values that potentially could be utilized in this negotiation are left on the conference table when the two parties have signed the contract and left the room. This is what we call negoeconomics, negotiation economics. And this is an award-winning, very simple mathematic model I'll share with you today, and even give you an example on how can we utilize that. Now, it's really simple. So you might ask yourself, why haven't I used that before? Why haven't I seen organization using that before? Why is it that more people are not utilizing this model? Because it requires some knowledge, it requires some experience, and it requires a toolbox in order to do that. And it also requires rules of the game. That means that we have to agree with the counterpart on how to negotiate. But we're diving into that in a second. The organization IACCM, that has been rebranded now and is World Contract and Commerce, is a global nonprofit organization with a focus on contracting, legal, procurement, negotiation, and similar stuff. They have 70,000 members globally, and one of the very interesting studies they do every year is the most negotiated terms. So they ask their 70,000 members, what are the items, the variables that you negotiate the most? And this is always a very interesting list to read. But this year, they're going to release their study next week. This year, they actually did another part of the survey where they were out asking their audience, as you can see, about their feeling towards negotiation, how they wanted to negotiate. And for the first time, we saw this enormous increase, as you can see, where the majority, 65% of everybody responding, said, we would like to have more open communication and more data sharing. 57% said, we would like more collaboration. We would actually like more openness and be able to collaborate compared to the zero-sum approach. And 44% said, we would definitely like more risk sharing. And that's actually great news that I will show in a second, because risk sharing is very much related to negoeconomics. This is where we can utilize the potential 42%. And then the 42% out to the left actually said greater transparency. Now, the reason I bring along this study is because this is the first time that we have seen this prominent numbers actually stating we want to change the way we collaborate. We want to change the way we negotiate. And that's great news for me, since I've been spending more than 30 years and actually trying to explain to the world, together with a lot of other experts, that it's really a benefit to try and change the mindset about negotiation. So I have to bring a warning to all of you guys. What we're going to talk about right now in this live broadcast is not so much a toolbox on negotiation. That is easy to find. Just Google it, buy a book, go to a seminar. What is really way more difficult and way more important is actually that we change the mind on how we perceive negotiation. Back to one of my first slides saying the myth out there that we are accustomed to for centuries, that negotiation have to be in a win-lose game. It doesn't have to at all. Now, the other question that World Contract and Commerce were asking their audience was, what is the main barrier for changing from a zero-sum game into a collaboration-orientated negotiation? As you can see, not a big surprise, a lot of them said resisting by the other side. It's always the other side, isn't it? The reason that we're not really truly successful is because of the counterpart. It can't be us. But anyway, they came out and saying the majority of the reason that we cannot move into more collaboration is the counterpart. The second item they came up with is actually internal stakeholder resistance. And this is really interesting, ladies and gentlemen, because I recognize that from my work as well. I very often work with executives that are out there negotiating, both as an advisor and as a trainer and as a coach. And what I often see is that I have clients that come to me and said, I embrace completely what you're telling us. I love the idea of negoeconomics, of collaboration, of the strategy choice and all the other things. But the problem is that my back office, my management don't get it, don't see it, don't want to do it, or whatever. Remember the phrase that water always runs downwards, right? So we need to implement negotiation philosophy at the top level. Negotiation philosophy and strategy is a top management strategy. So that is really important. We understand the implementation of that when we talk about negotiation success. And then the last one, really not a surprise, a lot of the people that were asked this question, what they wanted to see change in the world of negotiation, said actually, we don't have the skills to move from zero-sum into collaboration. And I understand that statement for the simple reason that it's a different kind of negotiation. It requires a little bit more of you, and it requires a little bit more of your counterpart. It actually requires that we have a great understanding, and we actually are trained in the philosophy on how to conduct collaborative negotiation and utilize the potential of negoeconomics. Now, any one of you out there who've been studying economics at one point in your life, I'm sure there's a lot of you who've been doing that. I'm sure there's even a lot of you who've been reading the book, The Wealth of Nations. It's a very old book written by the Scottish philosopher Adam Smith in 1700. And the reason I bring out this very old book is for several reasons. One of them is it's actually a very important book if you look at the history of mankind in the last 300-400 years, because this book has been recognized as kind of the Bible for modern economics. So it's really a book that is out there and has been used as the foundation of capitalism. So that is the book that basically dictates how we should trade between nations, how we should do business, and how we should conduct collaborations. Now, there's two big issues with this book. One of them is it is really heavy reading. I would say it's almost boring. There's no entertainment level whatsoever in this book. So that's the first warning why you shouldn't read it. The other warning why I feel you shouldn't read this book is that it's absolutely wrong. Now, that is a very bold statement, isn't it, about a book that is considered the Bible of capitalism. Thank God there are people out there that are way brighter than me that have been saying this for years and years as well. And one of them is the very, very famous American professor, Dr. Nash. Dr. Nash won the Nobel Prize in economics, and he's so famous so they even made a movie about him called A Beautiful Mind, where Russell Crowe plays Dr. Nash. Now, those of you who have watched the movie, please go back home and watch it because it illustrates the concept of negoeconomics perfectly, especially in the bar scene where Blonde walks in, and you can just watch the movie and see the rest yourself. For those who haven't watched this movie, this is your home assignment tonight. You have to watch this movie for a lot of reasons. And one of them is actually to understand the concept of game theory and how negoeconomics and game theory work together. So the work of Dr. Nash is actually the foundations of how we have created the concept of negoeconomics. But more about that in a second. Now, Dr. Nash said way back in the 60s that Adam Smith was absolutely wrong. Because what Adam Smith said in his famous book, The Wealth of Nations, is that the best result will come from everyone in the group is doing what is absolutely best for themselves. Pure egocentric behavior, right? Because you should only do what is good for yourself, not for anybody else. So Dr. Nash said that is incomplete. That is wrong. What we really have to do in order to be successful is that the best result will always come from everyone in the group is doing what is best for themselves and the group. That is the only way we can truly win. Now, this basically summarizes the difference between positional and collaboration, between zero-sum and partnership that I'm going to introduce you to in 1 second. Now, since 1976, the organization I'm heading today have been studying, working, doing research, negotiating, and helping our clients on negotiation. And one of the things we have learned that looking at more than 35,000 negotiations since we were established in 1976 in Stockholm are the 4 items that you see on the screen right now. These 4 items could perhaps change the world if we embrace them, because they are truly the ones that explain why some negotiators are more successful than others. I know I simplify it, but we have clearly identified that these 4 items are the key ones that will explain why some are more successful than others. Now, the first one is a choice of strategy. Those negotiators who have clearly identified and working with the strategy are way more successful than those that just tumble into a negotiation and basically just doing off the cuff. So we need a strategy. The second one is trust. And this has really become my baby in recent years, because I had an experience about 8 years ago. I woke up one morning and I got a weird stomach sensation that I felt that trust has dropped in the world. My sensation was so strong, so I wanted to write a book about this concept. But you just can't write a book on your own. Stomach sensation, that becomes very subjective. So I teamed up with World Economic Forum that went out and studied 20,000 people in 15 different countries. And then they came back to me and said, you know what, Kjeld, unfortunately, your stomach sensation was right. Trust has dropped with more than 55% in the last 20 years. Now, that is bad news. And let me share why that is bad news. If you have a low level of trust in any kind of relationship, your transaction cost will go up and your profit will drop. On the other hand, if you have a high level of trust in any kind of relationship, your transaction cost will go down and your profit will increase. So trust is actually a monetary value in a negotiation. You can put a value on it, just like transportation or delivery or warehousing or whatever you have as a variable that you can negotiate. Trust is one as well. So we really need to focus, plan, and prepare trust in any negotiation. Then we have rules of the game. And again, it's very clear to me that those negotiators who embrace rules of the game are more successful than those who doesn't. And what do I mean by rules of the game? It actually means that we have to negotiate on how to negotiate. We perceive negotiation so differently that you may think negotiation is like playing chess, and I may think that negotiation is like playing tennis. That's how differently we sometimes meet and try to negotiate. It's going to be a strange game, isn't it, when you're sitting with a chessboard, moving the pieces around on the board, and I'm coming in with the racket trying to play tennis. That is impossible. So we need to agree before we start negotiating on how we want to negotiate. And the fourth one, last but not least, is the concept of negoeconomics. As I said earlier, this is an award-winning model that basically proves that up to 42% of the values in a negotiation are left on the table when the party leaves. Sounds weird. How is that possible? It is, and I'll show you in a second. And this is regardless whether we're sitting in a merger acquisition, contract negotiation, service negotiation, product negotiation, whether we are buyer or the seller, what kind of negotiation we might be in, we have an unused potential of up to 42%. Now, let's talk strategy very, very quickly. When we have to choose a strategy, we have zero sum. Talked about it already. I win at your expense. The alternative to a zero sum is walking toward collaboration, and that is often phrased as partnership. I don't use partnership a lot, or the phrase partnership a lot, because it's a very abused and misused word, really. Because I have experienced throughout my career so many clients, when I ask them, what is your official negotiation strategy? I've seen a lot of them saying, well, that is partnership. And when I look into the detail, what I actually find is that a lot of them have just been using long-term zero sum. So they feel that if they have been working together with a counterpart for years, then they're in partnership. But in reality, it's just a long-term zero sum. The real partnership is something different that I will share with you in a second. Now, what is superior to zero sum and superior to partnership, is smartnership. What is the difference between smartnership and zero sum? In zero sum, I will win at your expense. In smartnership, I'll be focusing on you winning without I'm paying, and I'll be focused on I'm winning without you paying. So if I want to make an additional $100, I don't want you to pay for those like I would in a zero sum. I would work together with you for you and I to mutually try and identify variables that could create that value without what would cost anything for you or cost me anything. So it will be really 2 plus 2 equals more than 4. We'll be looking for that additional value. And the great news, ladies and gentlemen, is it is always there. There's always value we can identify. We've actually found that up to 380 negotiation variables could potentially create economics. That could be transportation, it could be warranty, it could be right of return, it could be a warehousing, it could be education. The list goes on and on and on. It's really down to the negotiators to change the mindset and understand that value and that potential that lies in there. If we just look at zero sum very quickly, just look at the picture. We have a guy with boxing gloves off. That's a zero sum. I win at your expense. Moving into a partnership, we see that the parties are committed to finding a common solution to reduce cost and increase profit. Progress is based on the creation of success for one without the loss of the other. So it's two acting as two, but they have limited disclosure and limited cooperation, very often because trust may not be there fully and they haven't agreed the rules of the game. So when we look at smartnership, we really see that the parties have agreed on rules of the game before they started. They are very open, they're transparent without being naive, and they truly work as two working seamlessly in an informed collaboration. Remember the first graphics I showed you with the soldiers in the trench pointing the rifle towards each other, traditional zero sum? What I would like to see in most negotiation is that the trenches become round. The soldiers are not pointing the rifle towards each other, but they're pointing the rifle outwards. That means they're looking for values from the outside. And what is it I mean when I'm talking about that? Well, very quickly, let's look at the difference between collaboration and zero sum. The list could go on and on. I'm just emphasizing a few of the important ones. What we typically see when we are in zero sum is there's a lot of argumentation. There was a political debate on TV the other night here in the US. You might have seen it between a certain President Trump and Joe Biden. A lot of argumentation. It was basically all argumentation. If it was interrupting, it was argumentation from both sides. That is not collaborative in any possible way. And some of you may be saying, well, a presidential campaign can't be in any way a very collaborative process. Well, I would argue the difference. But what is the collaborative negotiators doing instead and compared to the zero sum orientated negotiator? Well, he or she would be using questions instead of argumentation. What we also see is that the openness in zero sum is basically not there. It is non-existent. It is zero, where openness in collaboration is there to a large degree and has even been agreed on how we should share information. And then we have variables, and variables is whatever is negotiable in a negotiation. So a variable, as I said earlier, could be the price, delivery time, warehousing, warranty, whatever. And what we see is that in a typical zero sum, there are very few variables. The negotiators may predominantly be focused on price and stuff related to the price. They're not really expanding the pie. And when we move into collaboration, we see there is plenty of variables. So the negotiators have lots and lots of variables, and they negotiate on all variables. And quite often, they actually focus on price as the very last variable. Not that we shouldn't negotiate price, but sometimes, and very often in a commercial negotiation, we see price is the least important one. Now, if you look at this slide up here, could you please let me know, guys, if any of you actually feel that what you got up here is something that you would like? Is this something that you actually feel that would be of interest? Is that something, a way that you would like to negotiate? Because if this is the way you like to negotiate, where there's a lot of argumentation, stress, zero sum, dog-eat-dog society, a lot of threats, combative behavior, no feelings, we just focus on saving money, there's pressure on the counterpart, it's just business, that could be a phrase, then you are in zero sum. So these are some of the terms that you typically would see negotiators or business people are using, because they compare negotiation to a sports game. They compare it to a football game. Now, those of you who raised your hand and said, no, I like whatever's on this screen, go ahead, conduct your zero sum negotiation, because obviously that is what you would prefer. Those of you who would like a negotiation that has a different kind of wording, like collaboration, generosity, openness, asking questions, mutual agenda, keeping your word, trust, curiosity, agreeing rules of the game, and all of that, you are basically more tuned into collaboration. Think about it this way. I would actually challenge you to open a negotiation by telling your counterpart the following. I'm here today to help you reduce your costs, reduce your liability, and improve your profit. That's the reason I'm here today. That is my single focus on entering into this negotiation with you. Now, would you like me to help reduce your cost and improve your profit? Now, what you will find in reality is that the counterpart will look a little bit confused, but obviously they will say yes eventually. Now, when they have agreed to that, then you have to move on to step two. And step two would be, and your purpose as I see it being here today in this negotiation is helping me reducing my cost, reducing my liability, and helping me improve my profit. Will you be willing to do that? Now, if the counterpart says yes to that and is actually honest about it, then you're on the right track to create a collaborative negotiation. You are moving into partnership. Then you have to agree on the details, how you're going to do that. But this is basically how we should change the mindset and looking at negotiation. It's teamwork. We are here to help each other. So the real enemy is not the counterpart. The real enemy is the numbers. The real challenge is figuring out how can we make the famous 2 + 2 more than 7. That's really the reason that we are negotiating. Let me share a real life negotiation that happened a couple of years ago. It was a negotiation between one of my clients and a counterpart. It's a very, very simple negotiation. One of the parties in this negotiation is a lid manufacturer. They're producing lids, as you can see, to the food industry. And they had a client that was buying products from them for 25 million a year. Now, what happened in this negotiation, just to simplify it, is that the buyer came to the manufacturer and said, I want a price reduction for the next year's shipment of 9%. Why is a long story, so we're not diving into that right now. But 9% would mean a loss to the manufacturer of 2,250,000. Now, let me just stop the story for one quick second. What you're seeing now is a startup of a zero sum, because the buyer is saying, I want a 9% price reduction. If the buyer is successful doing that, then the supplier is paying for that. So he would lose 9%, right? Now, if the supplier were successful maintaining the price and the buyer wanted a reduction of 9%, the buyer is losing because he's not getting his 9%. So if we just stick with this negotiation, it will become a zero sum. What happens in real life, ladies and gentlemen, is a lot of negotiations would just focus on that and they would dive in. So the manufacturer would say, well, we can't give you 9%, but if you buy a little bit more, we might be able to reduce the price by 5%. And then the buyer would say, no, 5% is not good enough. We want at least 7%. And then you end up at some kind of compromise, which is in general a bad thing in a negotiation. But thank God, these two parties did something differently, because the manufacturer said, I understand you would like to reduce your costs, your total cost of ownership by 9%. Let me see if I can help you do that. But let's focus on the variables we have in our existing contracts. So what the parties did was they dived in the existing contracts and they tried to put values on every variable that could be important. One of the things they learned was that in the existing agreement, it actually stated that there should be 16 deliveries every month, and it was a delivery every second week. So there would be 16 locations delivered every second week. That was the existing contract. What they also learned was that the supplier was responsible for the warehouse. They also learned that terms of payment was 65 days from delivery. They also identified that the warranty in the existing agreement was 3 years. They saw that the lid size was fixed. They couldn't change it. And they also noticed that every order that came in to the manufacturer came just in time. So that means there was no long-term planning. Everything was just on time, and that was really it. Now, the parties here sat down then and focused on how can we improve this negotiation? Is there any possible way that we can make this better for you, but not at my expense, or make it better for me, but not at your expense? One thing they identified was that by changing the lid size, one side could actually save money, and they could save more than the counterpart would have expense-wise. They also learned that changing from just-in-time to planned bulk orders would save time for one party. They identified that reducing the warranty period from 3 to 1 year, 1 year warranty wouldn't really mean anything to the buyer. It was just something they would ask for. It doesn't really mean anything. That would create a value. If the buyer kept the warehousing, the stock, instead of the supplier, that would make money for both parties. And if they changed delivery from 16 locations to just 1, and reduced 2 deliveries every month to 1, they would create a value as well. And last but not least, changing terms of payment from 65 days of credit to cash at delivery would make a mutual value as well. Let me just summarize, guys. Negotiating these 6 variables up here generated a mutual amount of negoeconomics of 4,198,000. And this was truly real money created between the two parties that was expanding the pie. Now, how did this happen? I don't want to kill you with the slide, with the spreadsheet here, but what you can see up here is we have the variables out to the left, and what you can see is that delivery 16 location, reducing that to 1 location would save the supplier 580,000, but it would cost the customer 140. So negoeconomics, room for negotiation, is the difference between the two numbers, 440,000. I'll just go and explain one more variable before we move on, and that's the delivery once a month. Changing that from 2 times a month to 1 times a month would save the supplier 260,000, but would cost the customer 80,000, mutual value 180. So if you add all of these variables up, that is how we end up at 4,198,000. Now, ladies and gentlemen, the real negotiation in this case is really how we're going to split the 4,198,000. Now, as you remember probably, the buyer in this case wanted a reduction of 2,250,000. So if you are the supplier, you could be generous in saying, well, there you go. You can have that. That's what you asked for. And I take the remaining value that is out there. Or you can even be more generous and say, we can even split that somehow. So the key point in SmartNership is really not negotiating the release of information or even talking about the variables. This is all teamwork. The true negotiation starts the second that we have to split the amount of value, the negoeconomics that you find in a negotiation. Now, how do I identify what strategy we want to use? Well, for that purpose, I've created something called the SAM model, the Strategy Assessment Matrix. I'm sure you've seen this matrix in so many other cases, but this one, we use that simply to identify how we want to negotiate. Now, what you can see in this one is that we have a vertical line and we have a horizontal line. The horizontal line shows how important the counterpart might be for you. So the further that you put the counterpart out to the right, the more important he or she might be for you. If you look at the vertical line, that shows how important the view might be for the counterpart. So the further they will place you up north, the more important you are to them. So let's take an example. You're in a negotiation with a counterpart that doesn't really seem to find you very important, and you don't seem to find them important either. So we are in the lower left box, low impact, low risk. And here comes the $1 question of the day. Which negotiation strategy should you use if you are in this box down here, low impact, low risk? And the right answer is zero sum. So I'm not saying we should embrace collaboration all the time. I'm not saying we should be using SmartNership and negoeconomics all the time. There could be negotiations out there that serve a purpose doing it in a zero sum game. So if you're in a very commodity oriented market, thousands of suppliers, thousands of customers, it may not be worth your while to focus on collaboration. On the other hand, ladies and gentlemen, if you move up into the top right box, high impact, high risk, that means that you are very important to your counterpart and the counterpart is very important to you. Not working in SmartNership, I'm sorry if I'm being perceived rude right now, is absolutely stupidity. So two parties that have to work together for a long time, like a retail chain and a manufacturer, or any kind of collaboration that serves a period of more than 1 year, have to work in collaboration. Not doing it is unintelligent and is losing value, an enormous amount of money every single year you go through this contract. Now, look at this model up here. It's basically measuring the temperature of the different strategies, because could you be successful in zero sum? Absolutely, you could be. I know lots and lots of companies who are very successful purposely negotiating in zero sum. One of them is Walmart here in the US, very successful company. Nobody can argue that. So yes, you can be successful in zero sum. Now, I would argue, obviously, that if you change your perception of negotiation and you actually move from a purely zero sum approach into partnership, I honestly believe that you're going to be more successful by doing that. So think about how you could actually move that negotiation approach from zero sum into partnership, and even more superior if you can move that into SmartNership as well. That will really utilize a bundle of value for you and your counterpart as well. So this is all down to how you create a strategy. I'm just going to change the topic for a moment, because one of the reasons that some negotiators are more successful in this approach, and why some negotiators simply just are better at creating a value, is because of their preparation. I mean, not preparing is really preparing to a complete failure. So I'm just going with high speed through the 10 most important things that you need to focus on when you're about to head into a negotiation. And remember the quote out here to the left: everything you ever wanted is on the other side of preparation. And that is so true. Now, the 10 most important items that you have to focus on, whether you're negotiating face-to-face, online, doesn't matter, is the one I've listed on the screen right now. And what you can see is that we need to know our counterpart. And what I mean by knowing our counterpart is really, what is their values, what are their costs, what is their interest. Easy way to identify whether you have actually been in a zero sum or a partnership negotiation is simply looking at, do you know the counterpart's cost of values? Do you know their interest? Do you know why they're asking a certain question? If you know these ones, then you basically been in collaboration. If you have no clue about the cost, values, interest, purpose, threshold of pain, and all that, you have for sure been in a zero sum. So you need to understand your counterpart. Let me give you a little small piece of advice. When a counterpart, for instance, are saying, could we move delivery time by 2 weeks? Replace the sound of the word with the sound of a cash register. Because there's never ever in history been a negotiator been asking for anything without it had a monetary value. So instead of you saying, no, we can't change delivery time, or yes, we can change delivery time, you should immediately reply by asking a question. As you remember, I said earlier, lower argumentation and increase questions. And the question would obviously be, would there be a financial benefit for you if we change delivery time? Because you want to know, what is the benefit, what is the interest, why are they asking? And listen very carefully. You are willing to take on a cost if the counterpart's benefit is bigger than your cost, and they're willing to compensate you for your cost, right? So if your cost of changing delivery time by 2 weeks would be 500,000, but the counterpart's value is $1 million, you have mutually created nego economics of 500,000. It's really that simple. Item number 2 that you have to prepare is casting of roles. And let me just dive into that one. We could actually spend just a whole day talking about this one, because we can't negotiate on our own. We need to be a team. Now, it's not the more the merrier, so we have to be 20 people, but we need to be at least 3 people present at the negotiation table. Head of the negotiation team, the calculator, and the note taker. Really important. Then I got to expect the unexpected. And obviously, if I could share that with you, how you should do that, I think I would be more successful than I am. So obviously, I can't. But what I can do is that you just need a plan B. You need to know what to do if you get surprised sitting there at the negotiation. Then you need to identify, how important is this negotiation? Is it something that you really want to go through with? Or could a successful negotiation be that you don't reach an agreement? Sometimes the more successful negotiation are actually successful because you didn't reach an agreement. If that is better than reaching an agreement, well, then you were successful. Then we need an overview of all the quotes and alternative and all the variables, as we talked about earlier. So get up into that chopper. You need to focus on the big picture. So you might be losing on some variables, but if you win at the big picture, then you are successful. You need to create an agenda. You need to have a very clear objective. What is it you want to achieve? You need to be active, regardless what side of the table you might be at with your bids and bargaining. And obviously, you need to have identified a strategy, as I just said. I'm sorry, I'm going through this one very quickly, but today, unfortunately, we don't have time to dive in. But this is a whole chapter by itself, as I just said, obviously, because it's such an important topic. Now, just jumping back to online negotiation for a second, because I know that is something that all of us are experiencing everywhere in the world right now. But what is actually interesting is that even before the pandemic, so many of us were conducting online negotiations as well. IACCM, which is now World CC, and I conducted a study, and this was before COVID-19. So I repeat, before COVID-19. We conducted a study among our clients and among the members of World CC, and what we actually identified was that 70% of everybody who participated in our survey said that, yes, we predominantly negotiate part or all of our negotiation online. That was actually surprising to me. So 70% before COVID said, no, we actually predominantly negotiate online. Now, a result that wasn't really a big surprise to me was that 95% said, well, face-to-face is superior to virtual negotiation. I was kind of expecting that one, but 70% already online at that point, a little bit of a surprise to me. And then we got a kind of a spin-off effect of this study where only 5% said that they felt negotiation were sincere. That's a little bit of a surprise because that basically says that 95% of negotiators feels they're sitting in a negotiation where the counterpart really don't or can't negotiate fully. So I'm wondering why are they even sitting there if they don't feel it is a sincere negotiation? Let's just try and look at the detail within the 70%. The 70% of all negotiation being virtually already prior to COVID. If we look into the detail of that one, we learned that 41% was predominantly done by email, 38% by phone, and only 21% was done by video. And I just have to say, that's not good. I would strongly recommend not use email as the primary tool to negotiate. Sure, you can use it in between negotiations to share information. And yes, you can negotiate part of your whole negotiation by email. But in general, it's a great thing to see each other. It's a great thing to listen to each other. And I can just refer to a famous UCLA study saying 7, 38, 55%. That basically means that 55% of the reason that you would like, trust, or work with somebody is coming from the body language, 38% is coming from the tone of voice, and only 7% is coming from the wording itself. So that means what people are saying. And email, obviously, is that 7%. So it's really hard to get any kind of body language through in an email negotiation, obviously. Now, this whole study here, which is way bigger than what I just explained, is published in this paper called How Tech Has Disrupted Negotiation and What to Do About It. And you can download that from the World CC website, worldcc.com. If you're not a member, you can reach out to me and I'll be happy to send you this study for absolutely free. And what you can see on this page as well is that less than 20% of everybody that we were asking actually had a firm fixed negotiation strategy. So that means that the majority of negotiators don't have a strategy at all, which is a little bit scary in my world. We're very close to the end. And I just want to share this page with you as well. And this is basically an extremely important focus and highlights of the things that I would like you to focus on when you are negotiating online. And one of them is focus on collaboration even more online than face-to-face. As you might have experienced throughout the last 45 minutes, I'm in favor of collaboration. Not ruling out zero-sum, but we just need to know the benefit of collaboration compared to zero-sum, and we need to understand when and how to implement what strategy. But moving online, collaboration becomes even more important because online negotiation is more difficult than face-to-face. So focus on expanding the pie and create economics by asking your counterpart about the cost and value behind their demands and share your own cost and value. And obviously, before you head into this one, you have to agree the rules of the game, how you want to do that. 2, don't make this the new norm. And the reason I'm saying that is because I have met certain chief financial officers in certain organizations that are basically applauding and saying, this is wonderful. We have noticed that not traveling and not going to hotels and not meeting up with the counterpart in another country save us for a fortune on the traveling budget. So isn't that great? And I would say, no, that is not great. Not because I love traveling especially, but because it gives us so much better outcome if we actually focus on meeting up face-to-face, at least once or twice during a whole negotiation. Then other part of the negotiation could be by video conference or phone or email, but we need to focus on meeting up. Number 3 on this one, is considering the importance of the deal. And my recommendation is absolutely to focus on the importance of the deal. I have had situations where I recommend clients to postpone their negotiation until we can meet up again face-to-face. If it's a really true, important negotiation, and it could even be long-term, then you don't want to rush things. So perhaps you should wait until you can actually meet up face-to-face. And now I say something that I know could be perceived as very naive, but I would recommend that we try and trust the counterpart a little bit more. Trust is really, as I said earlier, monetary value. And last but not least, choose your technology. What is really funny, ladies and gentlemen, is that I was sitting as an advisor in a negotiation recently, and the negotiation started off with the 2 parties not being able to agree on what platform they should negotiate. Because one party had Zoom as the official platform and they're not allowed to use anything else. And the counterpart had Microsoft Teams as their official platform and they're not allowed to use anything else. So we spend an enormous amount of time negotiating back and forth on what platform should we actually negotiate. So it sounds like a little stupid thing, but it's actually important. And obviously it's important that technology works as well. Now, if you want to dive into more of what I'm talking about right now, we have a full online master program. We have actually a lot of different modules in there, from all the way up to a whole number of days, 90 hours, and down to a simple short study. And you can find those online programs on my website, kellyhansen.com. You can even try out our intro course for free. If you want that, just send me a message on LinkedIn or an email, and I will pass on the coupon code for you to get in there and try it out for free without any obligation whatsoever, just for you to see that. I also want to give you a little gift, and that's a book I specifically created just for the time we're in right now. And I did it for the simple purpose to try and help. I was sitting in the beginning of this pandemic and thinking, how can I help? All I know is something about how we work together and negotiate. And we need that because we have so many situations where there is conflicts right now due to force majeure or whatever the case might be. And I don't think the time is really for lawyers and dispute and court cases right now. I think time is for collaboration. So please go to kellyhansenshop.com, pick the book Negotiating Your Way Through the COVID-19 Crisis, and use the coupon code SMARTNERSHIP2020. And then you can download this book for absolutely free. And its specific focus is negotiation in connection with a crisis. I have a small favor that I would like to ask for you right now. There's an organization called Global Gurus 30s that have negotiation as one of the topics, besides body language and strategy and leadership and communication and lots of other stuff. And I've been nominated as one of the people that could be on that list and nominated to perhaps win that list. There's a lot of really great people on the list already that I respect the most. But if you feel that I could perhaps be part of changing the way that we see negotiation in the world and help spreading the message, I would love if you could go on the website. It is on the slide right now, and you can obviously watch it afterwards because this is a recorded session that will be on LinkedIn. What you simply do is log in. You have to register so they're sure that there's no fraud, talking about election fraud in general. And after login, you can scroll down and select other gurus besides the list that is in there already. Type in my name, select your rating, and you're all done. If I could ask you to do me that little favor, I would be grateful. Thank you so much. Last but not least, if you want to dive into this topic even more, World CC has a live webinar on this where we go in to look at preparation specifically, and that is 2 times 1 hour on November 2nd and November 7th, 2020, and at the different time. And you can just go to the worldcc.com webpage and you can see a lot more about that. Don't leave yet, and that does mean that I have a lot more to share with you guys. I'm just saying don't leave yet because there's more money left on the table. So when you at the next negotiation are sitting there and feeling you're almost done, then do a second evaluation round of your negotiation. Try and explore the variables you have negotiated already. Try and look at additional variables. Try and see what else you might be able to find in general, and that will give you obviously a lot of other opportunities as well. So try and expand that cake we've been talking about throughout these 45 minutes. I have reached the end of what I want to say. I got a question here from Mark Young, and Mark is saying, how do you do good relationship building when everything is online? Zoom has its limitation. I would definitely agree with you that online thing has its limitation. One of the things, it's a great question, Mark, it's really important. One of the things I want to share with you guys is that you have to first and foremost switch on the camera. One of the questions I'm getting the most these days is, what do I do in a negotiation where the counterpart is not switching on the camera? And I'm sitting there being on a camera. And one of the first things I want to say to you is, it's actually more important you're on camera than the counterpart is on camera, because you want to convey trust, openness, transparency, and all of that. And you can do that by actually being on camera. But besides that, you should have agreed in rules of the game that this negotiation is going to be live on camera, because it's really important we can see each other, back to the 7%, 38%, 55%. Another thing I would do is actually socializing a bit, even though it's an online thing. Now, in reality, Mark knows, like everybody else, that it's not that difficult. Well, sometimes it is, but in general, it shouldn't be that difficult creating trust, because we can meet, look at each other, we can have lunch, we can have a cup of coffee, but we should try really to simulate that when we go online. there's a tendency that when we negotiate online, we just go straight to business. We just go straight to the topic and we just talk about that immediately without spending a little bit of time being social, talking about the kids and the family and the background and the history and whatever. And then the last piece of advice into a great question is really share a little bit more about yourself, because remember this one, all business is human. I'm always laughing when I'm reading Financial Times or Washington Post and they say company A went into a business deal with company B. What a load of BS. Never happens. It is Mark Young that went into a business deal with Jennifer Wallace. And these are the two people that make this deal. So trust is obviously very important, as I've been saying, and we have to focus on that when we're working together, whether we're doing it online or offline. So thank you so much, Mark. I know that was a very brief question to answer to a very important question whatsoever. Thank you so much, guys, for taking your time. We've gone a little bit above the 45 minutes, I promise, but that's how it goes when you're in good company. Thank you so much for participating. Thank you so much for watching this one. When you're watching the recorded version, if you have any question whatsoever, send me a message on LinkedIn or an email. Go to my website, kellyjensen.com. Thank you for participating. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you so much.